Hello fellow makeup lovers, how are you guys doing today? Welcome back. I wanted to go ahead and do a comparison for y'all because Adept Cosmetics recently came out with their Amunet palette, which is available now for pre-order, and this is basically an updated version of the original Amunet New. I have played with both of these, the old and the new version, a ton, so I want to just go ahead today and do side-by-side swatches of each, kind of give you guys my thoughts on the updated version and let you know if it's worth purchasing if you've already had the original, and then also if you skip the original, if maybe the new one is a better choice for you and worth looking at. Like I said, it is available now for pre-order. Last time I checked, it's still live on their website, and I do have an affiliate code with Adept Cosmetics. It's just AMYLOVES. It saves y'all a little bit of money, and I also make a commission from it, just to let you know. But now let's go ahead and jump on into the comparison. So there's just one difference packaging wise, and that is that the Amunet now is just Amunet, and before it was Amunet New, which to me is a little funny because it's almost like Amunet New and then it's the new Amunet, but the only difference is that the name is now kind of like this metal, and it has a gold finish to it, which I think is really pretty in contrast to the red, but everything else packaging wise is pretty much the same. So here's what they look like on the inside. On top is the old version, on bottom is the new. This is also the light version of both palettes. The only difference between the light version and the dark version is one shade, which is Seth. In the light version, it's a light kind of like purpley neutral shade, and then in the dark version, it's more of like a cobalt blue. So those two have not changed. So you can see right off the bat that there are a few colors that have been completely changed and they are a brand new shade, but then also there's some that look the same but they've actually been reformulated. I believe that all the mattes were reformulated to be a little bit easier to blend, a little bit softer. I personally haven't experienced that much difference between the mattes, not enough to say, oh, I would purchase the new one because the mattes are so much better. They're pretty similar quality wise, and I've never had an issue blending the original Amunet New palette, so that's just my thoughts. And then some of the shimmers have been reformulated, and even though they're like technically the same color, I think they're actually really well done. So let's just go ahead and start doing swatches. So the first shade in both palettes is Osiris, and it's just a metallic kind of deep gray. So this is the old and this is the new. I feel like the new one has just a slight bit more shine to it, but overall I'd say they're pretty much the same. We have old and new. Okay, next we have the shade Horus, which is a matte gray. Is old versus new. Okay, so I actually didn't realize that. I'm going to do a little bit more of the new. It's slightly lighter of a gray and has a little bit less purple to it. So just kind of a subtle difference, but it is there. Okay, next we have the shade Seth, which is a light purple, neutral kind of matte shade. I feel like it looks lighter in the palette, but on the eyes it does show up a decent amount. But again, it seems like the old is just slightly darker than the new. There's old and there's new, but again I feel like on the eyes pretty much the same. So next for the shade Pata, I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing that right, but it is just a kind of vibrant Barney purple. So here we have the old and the new. The new is definitely a little bit brighter, has a little bit more pink to it. There's old and new. So I mean, you can see the new has less pigmentation to it, but I would say that it's definitely a little bit more buildable, but I'm not even mad at that. I mean, personally, like looking at this, I think I like the old purple a little bit more, but in comparison, because this palette is specifically marketed as supposed to be like a fun, neutral, like everyday work palette, then I can see why like having a pop of purple that is a little bit softer, a little bit more buildable, really makes sense in this color story and what this palette was made with, like the purpose that it was made with in mind. And I mean, I do have that purple kind of like through my crease a little bit today, and it added a little soft touch of purple, but it's nothing super, super bright. So yeah. The next shade that we have is Re, and this is probably my favorite reformulation between these two palettes because I just think that the new one is done super, super well. It's what I have all over my lid today. So this is a really beautiful, like soft kind of muted multi-chrome that has a green, purple kind of thing going on. So here is the old and here is the new. They are still the same color, but I don't know if you can tell, the new just has a little bit more shine to it. The texture is just really, really nice. And although I wouldn't recommend using every single Adept shimmer with a brush, this one, the new one, applied with a brush actually works super, super well. I think the color is just so pretty, and because it's so metallic, it just translates really well, whether you're wanting to go more green with this palette or more purple. I just think it's such a fun, pretty shade. Here's the old, and here is the new, with the idea of like a working like everyday fun but neutral palette. I feel like this is the perfect fun but neutral multi-chrome. So yeah, I don't know if you guys can see, the new one just has more pizzazz to it for sure. So next we have the shade Hather, and this shade has been reformulated, but it is still essentially the same shade. This is one that I can't decide whether I like the old one or the new one more. I feel like they both have their pros. So it is a really pretty multi-chrome. In the old palette, it is definitely more flaky. It has like a ton of texture to it, so it can be a little bit more messy. It can be very, very intense on the eye, but it is just so, so pretty. Like, I think the texture is gorgeous. So the new one, it is essentially the same shade. It's just like a satin texture instead, but it has a really beautiful glow to it. Like, it almost looks wet. So I feel like both of them are giving a beautiful, beautiful inner corner. They're just different vibes with the same exact color. So like I said, super flaky, super intense, textured, but in the best way. And then this one is more of a satin wet kind of look, but you still got that electric green shift. So I think it's so, so pretty. So here's the old, and here is the new. Okay, next we have the shade Anubis, and this is one where, again, the shade is pretty much the same. So there's old, and there's new. Next we have the shade Thoth, which is just like kind of a neutral, yellowy matte. It's honestly not my favorite shade ever. Like, it does what it needs to do. It's there, it works with the browns. Yeah, it's old and new. I don't think it's changed at all. So next we have one of the shades that is completely different. So in this palette, it is called Bastet, and honestly, not a shade that I am sad to see go, because you guys know I don't really go for like coppery orangey shadows all that much. It's just not my favorite to wear, and it has been replaced by Her, which is a really pretty kind of like pinky, but it has like purple sparkles in it, and I just feel like this shade really just goes well with this color story versus Bastet, which is a little bit more just contrasting. It's still a cool shade, but I definitely prefer the new one. So I'll show you. This is like a super soft kind of foiled shadow. It does have a little bit of a green flip to it, and then Her is soft, but it's not quite as metallic because it has like a little bit of a sparkle going on. It's such a pretty eyeshadow. Like, even the look that I have today, that all over the lid with the same crease, I think would be so pretty. So there is old versus new. I mean, you guys will have to let me know. That one is completely color preference if you prefer Bastet or not, but personally I like the new one so much more. Okay, we only have a few more colors, so I'm gonna do the last few comparisons on my hand just so we can kind of see it all at once without having to wash anything off. So next we have another shade that is completely different. So the old one is called Almond, and it's like this really pretty kind of peachy, warm, matte neutral shade. I do really like that one. I do miss it a little bit. I almost wish that that Thoth had been changed and this shade had stayed, just because I really like the tone of it, but I digress. The shade that it is replaced by is called Cirquette, and this is like a white to pinky, orangey, but mostly pinky kind of shifty shadow. And I do really like that this shade is in the palette because I think it goes really well with any of the purple looks, because previously if you did a purple look, the only inner corner shade you really had to go with was like this electric green, which is pretty in its own right, but I feel like this one is what I have on my inner corner. It goes really, really well. The only thing I will say is that it's similar to one of the shades in the Plain Jane Remastered palette, so I wish it had been just slightly more different. Here is the old, and here is the new shade. So yeah, completely different vibes. Okay, next we have the shade Nefith, which is pretty much the same shade but a different texture. So the old is kind of a little bit more flaky. It's actually really, really soft in the pan. Kind of feels just extremely metallic. It is a beautiful, beautiful shadow. I mean, cannot deny that. I just love the color of it. And then the new is the same type of shade, but I would say it's definitely feels like less wet and flaky, feels a little bit easier to use. You're gonna get definitely less fallout, and it seems like it has just a little bit more sparkle to it. I mean, you guys can see they look like they're pretty much gonna be the same on the eye, but I feel like the formula of the new one is just a little bit more user-friendly. So there's old and new. And then last but not least, we have the shade Amunet, which is a deep matte brown. And from as much as I can tell, these two are the same. We'll swatch them right here. Just a nice, deep, neutral matte brown. Looks like the old one has a little bit more pigment to it. I'm gonna swatch a bit more of the new just to see if it builds up a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Alright, so there are all the swatches of the Amunet new versus the new Amunet. I would love to hear what you guys think about it, if you like the changes or you like the original palette more. So personally, my opinion is that I do really like the new palette, but if you already own the old Amunet new, I wouldn't recommend going out and purchasing the new one. I feel like, yes, there are a few shades that have been changed, but I just don't know that it's worth buying a whole brand new palette. However, if you looked at Amunet new before and you kind of liked it, but it wasn't exactly your style, or you wanted it to be a little bit more cohesive, I would definitely recommend checking out the new Amunet, just because I feel like the color story goes together a little bit better. I feel like I have an easier time creating looks with it, especially just like with the purples, and like feeling like I have a really good complete look. And also I feel like now, even more than before, it perfectly encapsulates that idea of like, this is a palette for someone who wants to wear something fun but also neutral, or you know, like somewhere in between. So I really like that. I agree with it. I see it. I'm here for it. So hopefully this video was helpful for y'all. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.